It may be the offseason, but here at Fans First Sports Network, we are always on the go, ready, set, go, like the man sang. My name is Brian Anthony Davis. This is the Fans First Football Show, and it is complete today with Nick Hogan from Foxborough Frenzy. He is sporting this might be on audio, so you don't know, but he's really going Texas Longhorn today, as I'm wearing a Cosby sweater from 1988, I think. So good to be with you, Hogan.
Yeah, what's going on? I know I took a little week off there. I got a little respiratory sickness, but otherwise I'm rocking and rolling and ready to hit the off season and running. So let's do it.
I understand. So we got a shout out to he's been AWOL ever since the Super Bowl. Aiden Reed. He just says that he's unavailable, but I think he's in solitary confinement or he's in hiding with a light pole or something like that. I don't know. But Broad Street LinkedIn's Aiden Reed, he still does the shows, so you can catch him there, but he'll be back with us. Jess Place is I guess it's family vacation time, winter vacation for the kids. So he's out partying. He, of course, is with Mile High Broncos. So you've got me here with the Steel Curtain Network, also the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, and more. So Hogan and Foxborough Frenzy, we are going to talk about not just our teams in the offseason, but our teams, they're going to be in the top 10 of this list that we're talking about. And we are only 13 days away from free agency.
That's right.
And free agency is a big deal. And I know the combine is going to come out, that starts tomorrow. And oh, by the way, let me throw this in as my adult ADHD is kicking in. I got to throw this in. Fans First Sports Network will be at the combine this week in Indianapolis. You always catch KT Smith, Kevin Smith, with the call sheet. You also catch him on the whip around with Jeff Hartman. He is going to be at the combine this week with some reports. So lots of great stuff there. I'm excited to hear all of that. But with free agency, with the tampering period starting on March 10th, there's going to be a lot of talk to talk about there. And they're wrapping up plans right now for all of that. These teams are. And we got the news that the salary cap was bumping up almost $10 million. Hogan, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that this is going to be a trend that just keeps on happening?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt in my mind that I see the salary cap just continuing to rise and rise. I mean, at this point, it's a miracle that we're not getting contracts worth billions, keep up with baseball at this point with some of these contracts that you see quarterbacks getting. I mean, it was Patrick Mahomes a few years ago that signed a ridiculous deal. Now you got more guys coming out and signing even more and more ridiculous deals. And I think the big thing that the tonal shift that I've noticed where you see and take this with a grain of salt is I see guys that deserve the bag that they get, but then you also see guys that are a little bit unproven that either haven't won playoff games or, that they're hoping are the face of the franchise. And of course, I'm talking to the likes of Trevor Lawrence, your Tua down in Miami, where you see these guys, they got paid last year. And, Jacksonville and Miami both didn't really perform to the standards that they needed to. So I think the salary cap is going to continue to rise. You're going to continue to see players get paid. And until you see emergences of more Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's, Lamar Jackson's, you're going to see mediocre players get paid a little bit too much at times. And it's going to be that fine balancing act of finding who's worth the money and who's actually that long-term investment that's going to pay off.
Well, one worth the money, and I'm sure we'll be talking about in the next few weeks, it would be, I think he's going to break the bank. Jameis Winston, excuse me. Man, I killed that joke, didn't I? Jameis Winston getting $80 million a year. I book it. That's my prediction for free agency, Hogan. There you go.
Hey, I mean, I would take $1 million and you never have to worry about me again. But if he makes 80, good for him.
Man, I would love to see Jameis get a bag. Just enjoy Jameis.
All the crab legs he could have in the world.
All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to talk about the top 10 teams as far as salary cap, and we're going to go ahead and count them down here. And what we're going to do, Hogan is going to take two. I'm going to take two that we think can do the most with this, and one that we think is kind of going to, bungle it up. Let's put it that way. And we'll go ahead and we'll look at those. There's 5 teams with negative cap space. We're going to talk about them as well. So let's go ahead and get it done. Let's go ahead with the top 10. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and get started with number 10. And that, I believe, I lost my space here, buddy. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Trying to avoid that. Number 10, the Detroit Lions at what they're looking at, a targeted 51.8 million possibly. At number 9, the Cincinnati Bengals, 53.1 million. The Pittsburgh Steelers are projected to have 60.2 million under the cap at number 8. The Minnesota Vikings, 60.3 million at number 7. Number 6, the Chicago Bears, 69 million, as so many people chuckle. Number 5, Los Angeles Chargers, they are at 70.4 million. Number 4, the Arizona Cardinals, 76.4 million. That's like giving your 13-year-old your credit card. You never know what they're going to come home with. Washington Commanders, this one's interesting, $82.2 million under the cap. The Las Vegas Raiders are looking at 99.7 million, possibly under the cap. And number 1, this could be a blessing or a curse for my man Hogan, the New England Patriots, $126.6 million. Anybody surprise you on that list?
The biggest one that I want to talk about, and I know it's going to shock Patriot fans, and I'm not talking about my Pats, but I got to go with the Washington Commanders sitting there at number 3. And the biggest reason I'm putting them as my biggest shock to start with is the fact that they made the run to the NFC Championship that they did with a rookie quarterback, the team that they had built, a rookie, not really a rookie head coach. He's been a head coach before, but first-year head coach with the system, and Dan Quinn there. And the fact that they have that much cap space, and they made that trade for Marcus Lattimore later in the season, and they have a damn good team already, that could be really, really interesting to watch what they do with that money down there.
Yeah, and they are, of course, they are losing some free agents too, but it seems like they don't have a whole lot of holes to fill, Hogan.
No, and that's the thing is, like I said, they have a lot of leaders down there in the terms of Zach Ertz on the tight end side there, and then you had Bobby Wagner. I believe he signed a 1-year deal. Don't quote me on that. But he was immediately a presence down there at that middle linebacker position that defense values to the extent that they do down there. So, like I said, even if they lose a few guys, the foundation's built there with what Jaden Daniels was able to do his rookie year, and obviously winning Rookie of the Year and everything like that. But Washington is a interesting team, especially in the division that they're in with the NFC East there, with obviously the reigning champs and the Philadelphia Eagles. So I know Aiden Reed would have a bone to pick with me saying how highly I'm touting the Commanders down there, but I think they're a team to watch for in the future.
Yeah, they absolutely are. They're a team that I'm really excited about, and I live in that region. So it's a team that when I went to the Steelers Commanders game in November, I was kind of thinking that, wow, I can get behind this Commanders team as a number 2. And I was still surprised when they went all the way to the NFC Championship game, but it's amazing what a top quarterback can go ahead and do for you. So I have their list up here. There's some guys, there's some very important players that they could possibly lose. Diami Brown is not a starter, but he's kind of he came alive for them towards the end. One guy that I really think is a big free agent to go ahead and look at here is Jeremy Chin, the safety who they got from the Carolina Panthers. Another guy to go ahead and look at here is a lineman. He's a little bit older, but he was really solid for them. Cornelius Lucas. Bobby Wagner is on that list, like you mentioned as well. There, Jeremy McNichols, who came along for them. So there's a lot of guys on that list, but with the cap space that they have, they could bring a lot of those guys back and bring a lot of players in. Let me ask you this, Hogan. Where do you think is probably the most important spot that the Commanders would need to fill, just on the top of your head from just watching from afar?
Absolutely, it's got to be the middle linebacker position because, like I spoke to about Bobby Wagner, where he has been a force in the NFL for a decade plus at this point, going back to the Legion of Boom with Seattle. Everybody knows what he did with that defense. And obviously, reuniting with Dan Quinn was very special for him in Washington there. And the fact that they were able to surprise so many people this year, not just Jaden Daniels and what he was able to do, but also their defense, where they were kind of known as a joke for the last few years, primarily in the NFC least, as everybody called it. So I think Bobby Wagner, if you're not able to retain him again, or maybe he'll decide to retire. I don't know. He's definitely on the wrong side of 30 in football terms at this point. If you're not able to bring back Bobby Wagner, it's a position I think that they need to address. If whether they can take care of it in free agency, I'm not sure, or they might have to draft at that position because everybody knows middle linebackers typically are the guys with the blue dot on their helmet that get the play call and run that defense. So if it's not Bobby Wagner, they need to figure that out real quick.
Is it a different dot in? Do the Patriots have a blue dot?
I think they have a blue. I think that's what the term is. Usually, is it yellow? Maybe I'm
We call it
calling
green dot, but
green dot.
and
Okay.
I wasn't trying to correct you. I apologize, but I mean,
Okay.
who knows what they do in Boston? The green dot. You got the green dot here in Boston and in Foxborough. Go Pats.
That's right. That's right. That's all of us talk up here like that, obviously. And it's like
He's,
you said,
he's
the
wicked
trains and
smart
everything.
with the green dot.
That's right. Yeah. See, you just got to
Or the
bring out the
blue dot.
Boston in me. It's all good.
All right, yeah, I'm making fun, and my accents are bad. I understand. Now, I think the Commanders, I think they are set up to be that team. They could really take that next step, and they did a great job in free agency last year. Austin Eckler, I mean, that was huge for them. I
Right.
think another receiver,
Mm.
pair another receiver with scary Terry McLaurin, and you've got something special with the way that team is set up. But I agree with you on the defensive side of the ball too. Let's go ahead, throw out the other team that you think is going to be really special in free agency in the top 10 with all of this salary cap.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my guys, obviously up here, the wicked, awesome Boston. No, I'm just kidding. The New England Patriots.
The Boston Pats.
We're not in the 1960s anymore. Can't call them the Boston Patriots. They don't play in Fenway no more, unfortunately. But yeah, New England Patriots sitting there at number one with, over $120 million in cap space, which, Robert Kraft can't use the excuse that he wants to penny pinch anymore, and he doesn't have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick to rely on. He's got to spend money if he wants to see his team improve. And after the disastrous showing that they attempted to call that football team last year in New England, they need to figure things out, and they need to figure things out quickly. And I got to say, from my perspective as a fan and trying to be as objective as I can be, it was very difficult to sit there and expect big things in free agency in the last few years where you don't have the presence of Brady anymore. You saw those veteran guys that would want to come and take pay cuts with a chance at hopefully winning a championship, where now it's, what can you give me to entice me to come to New England? And I think a big thing that actually did help last year was the emergence of Drake May in the later half of the season, where it showed, okay, the kid can play. So hopefully that's enough to help push some guys that were on the fringe of being like, do I really want to go to Massachusetts? Do I really want to play in cold weather? Do I want to take a pay cut? Where you see what Drake May can do, and hopefully he's built enough belief in the system where, okay, this is a kid I can work with. This is a kid I want to play with in terms of like, your Jaden McDaniels or somebody else that showed what they can do on the field.
I agree with you 100%, but I've got to go ahead and throw in the fact that Vrabel really puts that over the top now. You do have Drake May, but when you have the veteran coach that everybody, seems to want to walk through traffic for and run through a brick wall. And that seems like Vrabel. And I think players are going to want to play for Mike Vrabel. So I think that's a big deal for the Patriots as well.
Right. And that's a big thing is obviously Vrabel is going to be the tone setter, that shift in the dynamic around the team as well. And I'm very excited to see what he's able to bring. And I think obviously him getting the experience he did in Tennessee in his first tenure as a head coach was invaluable for what he knows what he's doing going into this. It's not fresh. It's not brand new like Gerard Mayo was last year, where he was so inept that it was clear as day. He had no idea what he was doing. But that combination, like I said, it's as good as it is as Vrabel is the coach, it's a hard sell to get somebody to come play in New England if you're sitting there going, well, we're planning to play Jacoby Brissett as our starting quarterback, as opposed to this promising good kid named Drake May that can run around and do magical things. So that's my hope and my belief that If they're able to spend the money, spend it on the right players that are going to fit the system that they want to run. Don't just spend money to spend money, because a few years ago, when Belichick's tenure was ending, you saw that a lot with the Nelson Aguilar signing. You saw it with the Matt Judon, Hunter Henry, which again, not terrible signings, but it wasn't enough to really push us back into championship contention, where that was the hope when they spent the money that they did.
So we do want to talk about who those right players are, but before we do that, let's take a look at the list of who they have as free agents, and it's not that bad. Now, I'm not sure who all are starters here. I think if I look, and I'm guessing, and I am not a Patriots expert, so this is where I'm asking for some help. But I think cornerback Jonathan Jones and defensive end Dietrich Wise Jr. might be two of the more significant ones, if I'm not mistaken. And then I look at Jacoby Brissett. You might have to help with some of these names. Daniel Equale,
Equale, yep.
Equale, Jamichael Hasty, Jalen Hawkins, Austin Hooper, who's been everywhere, Joey Sly, the place kicker, Dietrich Wise Jr., who I mentioned, and Oshani Zibanez. And so am I correct that maybe Wise and Jones are the two most significant on that list?
Potentially. I would argue that Joey Sly, because the kicker position's been just a dumpster fire since Nick Folk left a couple of years ago, with where they tried to bring in the rookie Chad Ryland a couple of years. But yeah, a lot of those names are pieces that have been on losing teams. So it's one of those things where, would I be upset to see him go? Not entirely, but at the same time, if we were able to retain them on a deal that works for the team, I'd be okay with that as well.
This team is set up to succeed. Who would you like to see? What position would you like to see brought in if you had your number two picks, or number two picks of free agents right now? If you're the general manager and you have all this cash to spend, of course you could retain some of these guys on the list, but who are you bringing in from the outside?
Well, right now, the biggest thing being a former lineman, has my fatties, as I call them, that's the most important position on the field for me. Is obviously they got to take care of the offensive line, the defensive line. That's where they set the tone and everything. And I want to see Drake May stay upright and stay healthy this year. But that I know a lot of people don't get their feet running on the ground for linemen typically. So I'll go the path of least resistance, and I'll go with the star power wide receiver position, where the Patriots are in desperate need of anybody that can catch a football at this point, because their receiving core has been horrendous the last couple of years. Our number one guy is arguably Demario Douglas, who can't stay on the field, gets concussions, and nothing against him in terms of injuries. Obviously injuries are part of the game, but if you can't be on the field, that's the biggest thing. So looking at the list immediately, obviously the biggest name that Patriot fans have been screaming for the last couple of years has been T. Higgins. And obviously that seems like that door was slammed shut again by a team that we're going to talk about. Well, I'm thinking in a little bit, the Cincinnati Bengals there. I believe they threw the franchise tag on him again. But one name that I'd be interested to see them go after, depending on how his recovery is going, is a guy named Chris Godwin from Tampa Bay down there, where I know obviously he had the horrific injury again to his knee, where he tore it again. I think it was his ACL or whatever, but he's still one of the best prime receivers, below 30 in the NFL right now. I mean, he won a championship with Tampa down there with Tom Brady. He's obviously done amazing things with Mike Evans on the other side of him. And if he's able to come in, and I'm not necessarily saying he has to be the number one guy, but if he's a guy that Drake May can rely on, we can throw the ball to him and, keep him happy. I'd love to see if that connection could work up here in New England.
I think that would be fantastic. And we talked about, when we've been talking about this before the season ended, how much you want an offensive lineman with all the money in the world that you have, and a guy that you could probably get for $20 million a year and who's still on top of his game. Why not Ronnie Stanley?
Absolutely. I mean, he's a big one, obviously, that a lot of people know. I mean, you know him well from the Ravens days and everything as well, where he's been a part of a run-heavy offense almost his entire career. Obviously, he's 31, so it's not like he's a young pup or anything like that. But at the same time, linemen age almost differently, I feel like, because you got a guy named Trent Williams, who is still, an ageless wonder out there doing things in San Francisco that are absolutely incredible to watch him. He's arguably the best offensive tackle in the league at 35, 36 years old. So if Ronnie Stanley still got enough juice in the tank and he wants to come and, hunker down this offensive line, especially at either the left tackle, right tackle position, whatever he wants to play, it's a great start in the right direction, where they need to keep Drake May upright and healthy.
And I'll give you another guy, and he's a lot younger. I think he's 25, 26, and it's Alaric Jackson from the Los Angeles Rams, I think he is a fantastic addition for any team at that position at left tackle. So I would go ahead and look his way too.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break. We are going to be back. We're going to go ahead and give my two, and then we're going to look at the ones that might not manage this situation all too well. So please stick around. We'll be right back. It is the Fans First Football Show on the Fans First Sports Network.
Watch me go, never slow. Make 'em whoa. Watch me go. Ready, set, go.
Welcome back to Club Fans First Sports Network. Thanks for listening to those important messages and our dance party, as we always have, with the greatest, mid-roll music ever. I just love that stuff. We all bob our heads to it. So we are back. I am Brian Anthony Davis. We've got Nick Hogan here as well. Jess Place and Aiden Reed. They are off on assignment, which assignment means who knows what they're doing, but they will be back as we continue to have the Fans First Football Show all season long, and we're going to have a lot of fun as we do this. We're having fun now talking about the teams that have a lot of cap space. We went ahead and looked at the top 10, and we're going to go ahead and continue that. But real quick, if you do not remember, number 10, the Lions, number 9, the Bengals, 8, Steelers, 7, Vikings, 6, Bears, 5, Chargers, 4, Cardinals, 3, Commanders, 2, Raiders, and number 1, the New England Patriots. So it's time for me to go ahead and take a look at a team here. And I would be remiss if I did not bring up the Detroit Lions, who they did fall flat in the playoffs last year. They were one and done and ran into a buzzsaw that ended up being the Washington Commanders and just did not handle that situation well. And then they lost both their coordinators. But I think a lot of people, Detroit and all around the league, they believe in Dan Campbell. They believe in that situation there. And Hogan, are you with me where you kind of feel that this team is still set up very well, especially getting a guy like Aiden Hutchinson back?
Absolutely. I think that was the biggest thing that knocked them out of the running last year, was the fact that they got absolutely ravaged by injuries. And I stand on the hill until I die that I think Dan Campbell got robbed of Coach of the Year last year. I know obviously O'Connell did an amazing job with Minnesota, but the fact that Dan Campbell did what he did, losing, I think it was 22 guys to injured reserve, which I couldn't tell you the last time that a team lost that many players in one season to season-ending injuries, and to still win 15 games. And yeah, they had a bad day in the playoffs against Washington, but at the end of the day, they're still one of the top teams in the league. And as long as they have Dan Campbell and that core team intact in terms of players that they have at the skill positions and everything, I think they're going to be just fine.
$51.8 million under the cap. They definitely need to bring some defense in. This is an offense that is set up very well. You look at their offensive line, they could just bring depth pieces in there, but that offense is in good shape. Where would you go on defense for a team like this?
I think the big thing that jumps out to me right away is having a complementary piece to Aiden Hutchinson when he's healthy. I think that was a big thing that a lot of people were surprised about last year, where they didn't make a massive trade for somebody that could really up the ante and give you bookends at defensive ends on the defensive side there. And looking at free agency, one name that really interests me, if they have a inkling to go after him, is a guy like Khalil Mack, where he's a little bit older at this point, where he's not going to command top dollar like your younger pass rushers, your Joey Bosa's or TJ Watt or anything like that are going to demand crazy numbers, where Khalil Mack is on the twilight of his years there. But I think he would be a great complementary piece to Aiden Hutchinson when they're both healthy. And just imagine Mack and Hutchinson together. That would just be crazy to see up there in the NFC North.
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw in a guy that we talk about a lot here on the Fans First Football Show. Hogan, you know who I'm going to say.
Oh, boy.
I think they need to go Zach Bond here in the middle at linebacker. That's going to kill Aiden Reed, who has a man crush and I think has a restraining order from Zach Bond as well. But, absolutely, this guy came from nowhere last year, came from the New Orleans Saints, was more of a special teamer, came on a 1-year deal and just knocked it out of the park. He was a defensive player of the year candidate. He was in the top 5 for that as a finalist. Really, he showed his worth in the Super Bowl as well. I think a guy like that in this defense would add a lot of stability to them too. You don't have to go superstar here, but Zach Bond might be on his way to being one.
All I know is Aiden just turned over in his solitary confinement wherever he's locked up right now. He's not happy with you, Brian, for saying such things.
I know. I'm going to get a nasty message. Brian, man, Brian. Brian. So, you know what? I think that would actually be a good go for that team. But, they should have signed him to a bigger deal last year. And they don't have huge amount of cap space either, the Philadelphia Eagles, but they're not on the list of who we're talking about today. As we go back to the Detroit Lions, we want to go ahead and look at who they are possibly going to lose. So I'm going to pull them up here. The Lions, well, their place kicker Michael Badgley's on that list, but they had a different guy that they were going to, so not that big of a deal. If I'm looking through, you've got offensive lineman Dan Skipper, Kevin Zeitler, who is always very, very good here. Carlton Davis, the corner. You have some guys here and there. Nobody that stands out as somebody that's going to break this team, but with this kind of with over 50 million in cap space, they can bring these guys back as well. But I think nothing that's really going to break the Detroit Lions, and I think they are going to go on and thrive, and having this money would be a big deal to them. Let's go ahead with my other team. I would love to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers here, but I'm not going to. I really think they're going to do well in free agency. But I want to talk about the number 2 team on the list here, and it's the Las Vegas Raiders. They have $99.7 million to play with. They need a quarterback badly. The problem is you might not really find a quarterback in free agency because it's Sam Darnold and nobody else. So they might have to go for a trade here. But here's the thing. This is what makes the Las Vegas Raiders very exciting. And it's your boy, Tom Brady. He is changing things already. He is making that just his presence is making them a place to be. And it's a destination. Vegas is a great place to live and hang out. But, just the idea of playing for a guy like Tom Brady and his winning, the guy knows how to win in every single thing that he does, like him or not. And here, I'm a hockey fan. And I look at a guy like Sidney Crosby and Tom Brady. I look at them in the same light. Unless you watch them play for your team, you hate them completely. But it's hard to hate them when you see what they've accomplished. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and say that Tom Brady's making so many changes there. And a lot of people thought that they lost out when Ben Johnson did not come to the team. But I really love the signing of Pete Carroll here. Because Pete Carroll, another guy, Super Bowl champion, an NCAA 2-time champion, a guy that knows how to win, a guy that players respect, a guy that's not afraid to take his shirt off in front of his players, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But all I'm saying is Pete Carroll, even though he's in his early 70s, he's not washed up, and he brings a lot of accountability to this team. And players are going to want to play for a guy like Pete. So, with that being said, $99 million for a defense that is not that bad right now in Las Vegas, the defense did very well for them. This is a team that needs to fix things on the offensive side of the ball. They really missed out when they did not hold on to Josh Jacobs last year. They really thought they were going to, and he went to Green Bay. So they're looking to recoup. I think they're going to be bringing in a running back here. And if I were to go ahead and look at a guy that they would bring in, I would say the top two on the list right now would probably be a good bet to head to Vegas, and it would be Aaron Jones of Minnesota or Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that would work very well. That offense, that's a good offensive line, a very good offensive line there. They did struggle towards the end last year, but when they get healthy, they're pretty good. They need a running back. The receivers, you got to count Brock Bowers as a receiver here. And Jacoby Myers, I think, is one of the most, I know this hurts you, me talking about Jacoby, but he is one of the most underrated superstars in the league. And I consider him a superstar receiver. He's the reason that they had no problem getting rid of Devontae Adams. So I really think that you're going to go ahead and see an uptick on offense. They've got another tight end in Michael Mayer that's fantastic. They've got to fix that situation at quarterback, but don't sleep on a guy like Aiden O'Connell. If you give him some protection and some people around him and some stability, which I think, I mean, my gosh, you've got Chip Kelly there too as your offensive coordinator. This is going to be a very interesting team with all that money. I could see them making a lot of deals. I really like the Vegas Raiders here as well. I was going to put the Pittsburgh Steelers on the list, but I really think that I'm going to talk about them really quick. I might as well. I have two guys that I'm looking at right here. Of course, they need help at the quarterback position. It is not going to be in free agency either. Just like the Raiders, I just don't think Sam Darnold is the answer for a lot of teams. And I don't think somebody's going to bring him in, but I don't think it's going to be the Steelers, possibly the Raiders. But when I'm looking at the Steelers, I think they could really help themselves by bringing in Nick Chubb. And I think Nick Chubb is a guy that they can get for $3 million a year. And it's a guy that is he could be fully healthy after 2 years after that injury. And this is a guy that's still of a good age. And you pair him with Jaylen Warren, you bring back Jaylen Warren. I think that is going to be a very good situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a wide receiver is needed. And I think a stable wide receiver is needed to help out with George Pickens. And I really think that guy's Amari Cooper. You could get him at a decent price. He's going to be over 10 million, but he's not going to break the bank. And I think that is a good way to go. Of course, they need help in the trenches. We talked about Alaric Jackson for your team. I think that could be a possibility, even though they've got youngsters that they're looking at right tackle. The offensive line is improving, but they're probably going to need some veteran depth. And I could see that as a possibility as well. Depth on the defensive line too, in the trenches, and maybe a corner. So it sounds like a lot, but I think with over $60 million to spend, they'll be pretty good as far as the situation goes here. Let's talk about the two teams that we think are going to just completely blow this situation. And I'll let you go first, but I think you know where I'm going.
Oh yeah, we're like you alluded to earlier in the show when you bungled the situation. We're gonna drop the ball on them and call them the Cincinnati Bungles because that's what they do. Even though they're in the top 10, like you talked about, the biggest thing is the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, they franchise tagged T. Higgins. I think it's their second year.
It's not official yet. They haven't done it, but they're going to. I mean, it would shock everybody if they don't.
Right. Right. And that's the thing, is the fact that it's going to be the second year in a row that they know he's unhappy with the situation of not getting paid. You have to pay Jamar Chase. You've already paid the quarterback there, Burrow. Obviously, you're putting too much money into too few positions there. And the fact is, their defense was the biggest reason they couldn't make the playoffs this past year. They have to fix that defense. And if you're spending this crazy amount of money on your offense, which is not broken, you're scoring points. You're doing what you. I mean, Joe Burrow had every case to be in the MVP running this year. With what he did was ungodly numbers. I mean, he was insane this year for a team that barely won. Was it 8 games, whatever they ended up finishing at? But the fact is, the defense needs to be corrected for Cincinnati, and I don't see it being corrected because the amount of money they're going to have to spend at the end of the day is not going to be as much as they need it to be because they're tying up too much money with the guys that they have that are already set in stone.
And another guy that they're going to want to keep is a guy that you're very familiar with as well. That this is, my gosh, all these players that I feel like I'm like just shoving a knife into your ribs every time I do this. But Mike Gesicki's another one that was magic for them after failing in 2 AFC East spots, Miami and New England. He was wonderful for Cincinnati last year. I think the Joe Burrow effect is big time there, but they're going to want to bring him back, and he's going to command some money too. And so they're not going to be able to bring in a lot of outside free agents here, Hogan.
No, that's like I said, that's the sad part is as good as their offense is and could be. Again, I can tell you Trey Hendrickson plays defense for them. After that, I couldn't tell you a name that they have on defense anymore because they don't have the pieces there to be in championship contention with the defense they're currently putting on the field.
And they're going to lose another guy on defense, possibly Mike Hilton, which I don't think they'll be able to bring him back, which I'd love to see back in Pittsburgh. Just a fantastic player. Is there anybody else on that list that you can see messing this whole thing up in the top 10?
Oh, and I was going to say in the top 10, I was going to say I could name some teams that are in the bottom of the barrel that are going to screw some things up. One team that I'll touch on briefly that I don't want to say they're going to screw it up, but that they need to really nail it on the head is the Chicago Bears. I'm just going to put that out there because obviously they got the fresh young coach in Ben Johnson, and they have the number 1 overall pick last year with Caleb Williams, and they have the star power across the board in terms of DJ Moore, the receivers there are Keenan Allen. They have the pieces there. It's a matter of, are they going to finally put it all together, form the puzzle, and just figure out that team and go on a tear at some point? Because it seems like every year since 2000, what was it, 5, 6, when they made the Super Bowl back with Brian Urlacher and that crazy defense, every year we always talk about, oh, this could be the Bears' year. It's almost like they're the new age Cowboys where this could be their year, and then they always fall flat on their face. So the fact that they have as much money as they do, they have enough young talent across the board, they have a young coach that knows how to call offense. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if they can put things together this year with that cap space and who they can grab in free agency to really bolster that team.
That's a good call, and I am not completely set that the Bears can pull this off because I have not seen it with their general manager situation as well. It's there's been a lot of mismanagement over the years. So I think that is a good call there. I know you're not exactly saying that they're going to screw this up, but I think there's more teams in the top 10 that are more likely. So I like that. I would have probably thought Arizona has the opportunity to screw it up too, but we're only pulling out 2. Let's go ahead and look at the bottom 5. And we're going to pick one team from here. I'm going to let you do it, Hogan. One team that you think is going to be fine despite being under the cap right now, and one that the pooch is so screwed that they don't have a chance. So let's go ahead and look at this. We will start at number 28, the Atlanta Falcons. They are negative 4.9 million. Seattle Seahawks, negative 6.4 million. Buffalo Bills, negative 10.1. The Cleveland Browns, if it's Brown, flush it down, negative 24.3 million. And the New Orleans Saints at number 32 with negative 47.1 million. Oh my goodness. Who do you think has a chance to work their way out of this?
This you want to talk about knife in the ribs? This one's going to pain me to say it, but I got to go with the Buffalo Bills. I know
that's what I think too.
That's where it's at, right? I mean, they're in the hole right now in terms of cap space, but we saw this same situation last year where they dumped prior in the offseason. They dumped some big names, Tre'Davious White. I mean, they offloaded Stephon Diggs down to Houston. They got rid of major pieces of that team that had been staples for them for the last 4 or 5 years, and they still were ridiculous this year. I mean, granted, they've faltered in the playoffs. It's a Buffalo thing. That's what they do. But anyway, I'm not going to dump on them for that. But I mean, at the same time, they've proven that they can lose key pieces and continue to win. And obviously, a big, huge factor, and that is the MVP and Josh Allen and what he's able to do by himself. He is practically Superman up there sometimes. But if they're able to, again, get that cap space cut down, and Josh Allen is able to elevate the guys around him, and that defense is still able to play as well as it can play at times, I think Buffalo is going to be just fine rolling into next year, just like they were the last couple of years.
I'm going to go ahead and talk real quick about the Falcons and the Seahawks. I don't think they are a problem here. Especially, I think the Falcons are going to drop Kirk Cousins, and they'll that will make a big difference as far as the money goes for them. So I think they can get out of that situation and maybe drop another player or two. So they will be fine. They'll actually have the ability to bring somebody in. The Seahawks always seem to figure it out. So I'm going to let you choose between the Browns and the Saints. There's a lot of money difference here, but I'm always inclined to say the Browns are going to screw everything up, especially with what you're saying with Myles Garrett. I'll let you pick between the two, but 47.1 million in the hole for the Saints. Ouch.
I know you love to absolutely love all over the Browns, so I'll let you talk about them in a second. But I'm going to go all in on the Saints here and just how badly they have screwed up that franchise down there since the likes of Drew Brees and Sean Payton have left town. I cannot believe they are so far in the hole. And if you're sitting there and you're telling me they have good players on that team to build around, they don't. They don't. They have invested so much money into Derek Carr, who cannot get through a season, has proven time and time again that he's not really the real deal. I'm sorry. I know there are a lot of Derek Carr fans out there, and nothing against the guy, but he just has not proven that he has the ability to win long term in this league. At the same time, you got a headache situation with Alvin Kamara, who you paid, and he's not happy. There was a lot of trade talk about him potentially wanting to get out of town last year down there. And then you got a ton of money wrapped up in it was a Taysom Hill down there who what position does the guy play? Does he play tight end? Does he play quarterback? Does he play running back? We don't know on a day-to-day basis because he's all over the place, but yet he commands so much money for not being on the field 100% of the time. So the Saints have a lot of work to do, and I do not envy Kellen. Is it Kellen Moore who took the position down there as the head coach now, where he's got to figure things out, and they got to figure things out fast.
Yeah, this is going to be a major rebuild in New Orleans. And if I had to go ahead and pick bad situations here, I'm going to continue to go ahead and rip on the Browns, but say I think the Browns are in better shape here with the New Orleans Saints. The Saints, I think 2 wins tops next year with this roster and with this situation with no help coming in, but in the draft, I think they're in dire straits. And the Cleveland Browns, as far as that goes, if Myles Garrett wants out, the rest of this team is probably going to follow. This team looks like they are completely going in the other direction once again. They are poorly built. The Deshaun Watson signing just crippled them. 275 million just crippled them, and they haven't had a number 1 or number 2 draft pick in I think eons. So with that being said, they may have had a number 2 in there, but with that being said, Cleveland has not been able to replenish, and they're negative 24.3 under the cap and have a lot of free agents. Oh my goodness, this situation's bad, but I'm with you. The Saints have it worse. I wouldn't want to be a fan base of either one. Let's put it that way right now.
Right. And then really quickly about the Browns, I think Kevin Stefanski has done a pretty decent job with what the hand he's been dealt in Cleveland. And like you said, they have just dug themselves such a deep hole at this point that Deshaun Watson trade is going to go down as arguably the worst trade in NFL history, as far as I'm concerned.
Can I say something about Kevin Stefanski here? I think he is a fantastic coach in a horrible situation.
Right.
I really think that the franchise that he is with is just a. I don't think that not the fan base. I don't think that organization deserves a great coach like Kevin Stefanski. I think he's that good. He's
Right.
that good of a head coach, and I think it's almost like, remember Belichick? He was a head coach in Cleveland, and thank God they got rid of him and he did not become the head coach of the Ravens. I'm so happy about that. But all I'm saying here is, my goodness, the Stefanski. I think a lot of the guy. I know a lot about. I followed his career, and I think he would be better off in another situation. So if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm not upset if I get fired, because I think there would be a lot of other franchises clamoring to get him.
Maybe he could be asked to be put in part of whatever deal gets Myles Garrett shipped out of town. They can be a package, get sent somewhere else, and they can both start afresh somewhere new.
Let me ask you this. I know you're happy with Rabel, but would have you taken a guy like Stefanski first?
Absolutely. Oh, well, I mean, if Vrabel was off the table and Stefanski was a favorite or somebody that we could attain, absolutely, because he's proven what he's able to do with a team like Cleveland, where I think he did win Coach of the Year at least once down there. Twice, exactly. And the fact that he's been able to do what he's been able to do and bring, I mean, I go back to not last year, but the year prior, where he brought, the corpse of Joe Flacco on the field and got them to the playoffs with Flacco of all players. It's like, he can do incredible things with mediocre talent. So I absolutely would have taken a chance on him.
And he's the only coach, and this is embarrassing to my team that I love so much. He won a playoff game at home having COVID.
Right.
I mean, that's, trust me, he wasn't there, but he was involved in that whole situation, and that's just phenomenal to me as well. That's
right.
Having your team prepared. So with that, I just think they mismanaged the Baker Mayfield situation there. They've done so many things, being minus 24 in the hole. I just think that these two teams are battling for the number one pick next year.
It's got to be up there. I mean, I look at, like you said, across the board, you look at some of the teams and the cap space that they're dealing with right now, and it's hard not to look at the Browns and Saints as battling for 1 and 2 in the draft pick next year, because they don't, like you said, they don't have the help coming, and they're already so deep in the hole. It's not going to get better for either franchise at this point.
I want to bring up one more team that is not in the top 10, not in the bottom 10, but right there in the bottom of the 11. It's the Baltimore Ravens at 12.9 million. But here's the thing: the Ravens always find a way. They are like the Steelers in a way, where they find money in the couch cushions, and I can see this team. I'm putting a hundy down on the fact that I think they're going to cut Justin Tucker and bring in some cap space there. I think that situation is going a little bit crazy, and I think they're going to part ways with them, and they will find ways to bring in some weapons for Lamar Jackson and even help out that defense as well too, who the defense really came alive at the end of the season. So the Ravens, just like you talk about the Bills, it kills me to have to talk about the Ravens, but I think where they are at 12.9, I think they're still in fine shape.
Right. And that's the thing, is the Ravens are just always going to be the Ravens. As long as Harbaugh's there and Lamar Jackson keeps playing the way he's playing, they're a team you can never sleep on. And they're going to find a way to figure things out. I mean, they got Derrick Henry there of all places. That's just a crazy, I don't know. The Ravens are always going to be the Ravens, and they drive me nuts as a Pats fan. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I'm ready to redistrict the whole thing. But with that being said, it's time for us to get on out of here. This was supposed to be a short show. I promised Hogan that, but we had a lot of fun, and we talked about a lot of teams here. There's so much to talk about. There are going to be so many storylines. So please stick with the Fans First Sports Network, whether it's your favorite team's affiliate or any of the great affiliates that we have here, plus the NFL affiliate where this show is on. You have to check out all these shows. You would be amazed what you're going to find. It's some really good stuff. So make sure that you stay here and stay tuned, and please tell all your friends about FFSN. For Nick Hogan, my name is Brian Anthony Davis. We are so glad to have spent the time with you, and we've got one thing left to say. And Hogan, I'm going to let you say it.
Ooh, okay. It's quite simple. It's 2 words. You know them well, and it's this: go football.
Watch me go, go. Never slow.